The last 5 decades, there's been one particular name that's been synonymous with auto racing in New England. That name is Koszela. Starting back in the late 50s, Sonny Koszela, or John Koszela Jr., started to get interested in auto racing, and he built his first car. It was a dirt car. They ran mostly dirt until basically through the 50s and into the 60s, and had such notable drivers at the time as Fred Crockett, Roland LaPierre, and Ernie Gahan. With Ernie Gahan, they really started to travel around and made a reputation for themselves. The championships, there were numerous. Albany, Saratoga, Stafford, both dirt and asphalt, plus over, I would say, at least 200 wins. In the late 60s, Sonny decided he was going to abandon the dirt effort and go with an asphalt car. Along with some help from a very close friend of his, Dave Torini, and another gentleman by the name of Zip Zeller, they put together an asphalt coupe. They started off with Frank Farrier in it, and they ran a few shows with a limited amount of success. Later on in the year, Leo Cleary was out of a ride, and he jumped into it. This was in 1969. Leo ran very strong in that car, and in fact, it carried over into 1970, the first race at Martinsville, and then they went their separate ways. Well, it just so happened that another gentleman who happened to finish second at Martinsville that day, Freddie DeSauer, was out of a ride. He got teamed up with Sonny Koszela, and they set their mind to it, and they went out and won the national championship, the NASCAR Modified Championship. Back then, it wasn't what it is today. Today, there's like 19 or 20 races, and that was it. The venue back then was Albany on Friday night, Stafford on Saturday night, Thompson on Sunday afternoon, load up and haul up to Utica, get there in time to run the concert and run Utica Sunday night, and then come home on Monday morning and go back to work. Now, during all this time, Sonny operated a successful lumber business in it's actually Coventry, Rhode Island, but they call it Summit. In 1971, what a lot of us consider the shot heard around the world was when Bugsy and Freddie DeSauer switched rides. And between Sonny Koszela's 15 and Lenny Bowler's number 3, it created one of the greatest rivalries we've ever seen here in New England, both trying to outdo each other. And they both succeeded. But the one thing that they really wanted the most, and they really tried their heart to do it, was a national championship. But they had one nemesis, and that was Jerry Cook. No matter where they ran against him, they beat him, and they beat their pants off every time they ran against him. But if it was a low-paying show, Sonny, being a man of means, wouldn't go out and run for $200 or $300 to win, where the other guy would, and that's how they beat him. In fact, just as a sidelight, I was in Koszela's family room one time up there, and I happened to look up on the wall, and I finally found out how they worked out their frustrations. Sonny had a dartboard mounted on the wall of his family room, and on that dartboard was a picture of Jerry Cook. And believe it or not, they'd sit there and throw darts at it, and they'd feel a little better after that. But needless to say, they have nothing to be ashamed of. And since the Bugsy era, Kenny Bouchard drove the car, and then Mike Stefanik. But in the last 5 decades, the name continues on, because during that point in time, Sonny did probably what is probably the most thing he should be really proud of, and he provided through racing a good livelihood for his family, including himself and his wife, and his daughter and his son-in-law, through his speed shop business. And that all came because of racing. And even though the Koszela 15 is no longer in competition, The wood chopper goes on, as you see it outside here. And that was one of the 1970 era coupes that both DeSaro and Bugsy drove to many, many wins. And hopefully, maybe someday, if Mike Stefanik ever does retire, which I'm sure he will sometime, I wouldn't be at all surprised to see that 15 come back again. And like I say, the Koszela family in racing, his wife and his daughter and his son-in-law through his speed shop business. And that all came because of racing. And even though the Koszela 15 is no longer in competition, the wood chopper goes on, as you see it outside here. And that was one of the 1970 era coupes that both DeSaro and Bugsy drove to many, many wins. And hopefully, maybe someday, if Mike Stefanik ever does retire, which I'm sure he will sometime, I wouldn't be at all surprised to see that 15 come back again. And like I say, the Koszela family in racing will continue on. So it's my pleasure to induct in the class of 2002, John Sonny Koszela, the owner of the Woodchopper 15.
And all the members making this possible, and seeing all the people here that I haven't seen in a long time. I'm going to kind of make this thing short because Nicole, my granddaughter, says she wants to get back and make sure she sees every play. We started about 1957, built an old coupe, and we started running up in New Hampshire where Ernie Gahan, we watched him win every race. So it didn't take too long for us. If you want to win races, you go after the driver. So in July, Julie was born in the morning. We won our first race at Stafford. It was from then on we won a lot of races. Stafford. I think you already remember towing the old Grand National to Martinsville. We didn't tow it on a trailer. Didn't have a trailer. We just towed it on the wheels. When we made it there, when we got back. Then we had very good success. Bill Slater, I don't know, I think Bill Slater's here somewhere. He drove for us for a short time. I don't know, is Bill here? How many races did you win straight? What you claim? Okay, I'd go for 5 or 6. But have you ever forgiven me for firing you after all the races? Okay. All right. Then we had Leo. He liked to go from the front, from the back to the front, and a lot of times he wouldn't make it. He was pretty super. And then Freddie DeSaro. He was one of the best. He was very good. He'd go to the track. We'd have warm-ups. Never show nothing. Everybody would say, "Oh, you're not running tonight. You're not running tonight." Well, at one time when we had the double features at Stafford and Thompson, it was 8 shows. It was two weeks. He won 7 out of the 8. That was a pretty good show. Many times as people have asked me, what was our most memorable races? It's probably most of them was the ones that we lost, not the ones that we won. We won 11. It was one at Trenton with a Ford. We had a lot of fun with that Ford. We was running about at the end of the race. It was Richie Evans and Bugs. And I think Bugs will remember it. And we happened to go out there. The last probably 10 laps was going nip and tuck. And we went away. We run about a lap and a half short of fuel. So in a way, we ended up second. We had to pit and had to pull the car in and we had to pit. But the best thing, really what was nice, Richie Evans come over and says, "Sonny, you boys, Bugsy, you really won that race." So that was that really always stuck with me. I thought it was really great. Really, we've got a lot of friends here that came a long ways. Bugsy, I think he comes from Florida. There's another fellow there come from Florida. I really appreciate it, and all the rest of the people, families, and whatever. And if it wasn't for the pit crews, the people who worked on the cars, I wouldn't be here now. They stood with me. There's a whole bunch with my son-in-law, which he come on, and then racing was different. We ended up getting big trailers and whatever to go along with the rest of the people. So, and he's had a very successful seasons with us and without us. And I really got to, thank Dave Torini, which he's been with us since the night that my son was born, I think 1968, and he's been a real loyal friend. And I want to thank everybody for this whole thing. Thank you.